also become sick. My dear colleagues and my dear student friend, Namita Kalita has very beautifully organized and given us a lot of gifts also. Instead of one, she has given us so many items. So now I'm just seriously thinking how far I can do justice to her generosity and hospitality. And then, since so far from the students, from yesterday till today, no questions has been raised. Therefore, I'm seriously thinking how much of impact or intelligibility we are signaling to the student and how much benefit our students are getting. I'm seriously reflecting. And that is how often philosophy is being considered as too elitist. Many ordinary people cannot understand. So, is it really the case, and how far I will be effectively able to say something which I want to say? Well, I want to give Kant's epistemology a critique, but to give my critique, I first have to tell what it is epistemology. Then I offer my critiques and others' critiques. So, since 20 minutes, so I'll just read out without reading the abstract. Epistemology as the philosophical inquiry into knowledge has been centrally concerned with questions about what we can know, how we know, and with what degree of certainty. Many philosophers have talked about certainty, but they have been also under fire. Therefore, I raise again to what certainty? From ancient Greek philosophy to modern Western thought, philosophers have struggled to identify the source, the justification, and limits of human knowledge. Plato distinguished between knowledge, episteme, and opinion or doxa, while Aristotle emphasized empirical observation combined with rational insight. And Plato's theory has gone unchallenged for 2000 years. It was only after 2000 years Edmund Gettier challenged with the justification to believe. But even that has been again questioned. So now this early reflection set the stage for later debates between rationalists and empiricists. The modern period witnessed a sharp polarization between two dominant traditions. Concerned rationalists such as René Descartes, Spinoza, Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz emphasized reason and innate idea as the primary sources of knowledge. And for some time that was thought to be true. But again, that has been also under fire, under question. Empiricists such as John Locke, George Berkeley, Stephen Hume, and many others, by contrast, argue that all knowledge originates in sensory experience. Each tradition, however, faces serious difficulties. Rationalists or rationalism risk detachment from experience, while empiricism struggles to account for necessity, universality, and objective validity, which Kant tried to prove it through his transcendental deduction. And the source part, Kant tries to justify through his metaphysical deduction. And by deduction here, Kant does not mean a deductive logic, but here his specific meaning is justification. It is within this philosophical impact of that law that Kant's epistemology emerges as a decisive intervention. Kant does not merely propose a compromise between reason and experience, rather he reconceptualizes the very framework within which knowledge is possible. Kant's critical project and the Copernican revolution. Here, the Copernican revolution is also very subtly different from the rationalist tradition. People sometimes misunderstand and they identify the two, but they are not. Kant's epistemology is inseparable from his broader critical project, most famously articulated in the critique of pure reason. Here, what does it mean by pure? Here again, many people confuse. Pure does not mean pure milk or pure ghee or pure oil. Pure here means in the sense of not mixed with experience, empiricism, but a priori, a priori, okay? That is what he means. Kant characterizes his method as a Copernican revolution in philosophy, just as Copernicus explained the apparent motion of the heaven by assuming that the observer moves rather than the star, like we move in the vehicle or we move in the aeroplane. But the object appears to move. But in reality, it is the observer, the plane and the vehicle. And proposes that objects of knowledge must conform to the cognitive structure of the known subject. But here again, Kant's category, some people misunderstand as if the static structure, not at all. The very active structure, structuring and ordering the chaotic mess of the sensory material data, rather than the subject passively conforming to object. The central question guiding Kant's inquiry is, how are synthetic and priori judgment possible? Synthetic judgment extend our knowledge beyond what is analytically contained in concept. But here again, like Frege and others have again critique with Kant, that it is also not at all extending. Therefore, philosophies tend to be revolving, continuously critiquing and changing, while a priori judgment possesses necessity and universality, independent of experience. Kant argues that mathematics and natural science contain such judgment, and explaining their possibility become the key task of epistemology. But even this, as you all know, Karl Popper has critiqued again that even the possibility of necessity and the universality can even undergo change, just as the planetary motions of the universe itself are also changing. If they're changing, accordingly, we cannot guarantee that tomorrow the sun will rise from the east or appear to rise from the east. And that's how Popper puts it under high probability and probability under his philosophy of science. Sensibility and a priori intuition, space and time. According to Kant, human cognition has two fundamental faculties: sensibility and understanding. Sensibility is the capacity to receive representation through being affected by object. The immediate representation given to sensibility are called intuition. So this space and time, Kant is using transcendental aesthetic. Here again, many people who understand superficially misunderstand it. Aesthetic as the aesthetic appreciation of beauty, not at all. Kant does not mean that. Kant means here simply mean a sort of link with experience, detached from reason. Kant makes a crucial distinction between empirical intuition and pure a priori intuition. So here again, the place and time, people again misunderstand and confuse with the pure concept or the category. The categories are in a sense an active structuring part, whereas the space and time as a prior intuition are more of inherent static for the capacity to receive the external intuition or experience or the object of the experience. That's the very subtle distinction he's making. Space as the form of outer self. Space for Kant is not an objective property of things in themselves, nor is it derived from experience. Rather, it is the a priori form of outer self. And a priori simply here means before the experience, the capacity, so to say, the inherent sort of the capacity, the subjective condition under which alone object can appear to us as external. All spatial relations such as distance, magnitude, and position presuppose space as an a priori framework. It is presupposing that. Time as the form of inner self. Time is also the a priori form of the inner. So again, inner and outer. How time is inner? Why not outer? And space as not inner but outer. Kant's point very important, and people confuse this also. Governing our awareness of inner self, inner state, the thought and experience. So it is that internal awareness that makes the time as internal, okay, inner, not outer. Unlike space, which structures outer appearances, like I see you, you see me. Time structures both inner appearances and indirect outer one sees all representation occur in time. And imagine if time is not there, what happens to us? Time is therefore universal and unavoidable in human experience. Together, space and time are what Kant called the pure forms of intuition again. Here again, the same sense of pure is not uncontaminated one. No. Its meaning is simply for the experience. That's all. They are not learned from experience, but make experience itself possible, without which experience itself is not possible at all. In a metaphorical sense, the function and the invisible operating system of human cognition, which we take for granted, we don't think about it at all. And particularly, it is a very distant thing, or it appears to be non-existent for ordinary human thinking, understanding, and the categories. While sensibility provides intuition, it does not by itself give knowledge. Knowledge requires the active contribution of the understanding, which takes object through the concept, not through the experience. Kant distinguishes between empirical concept derived from experience and pure concept of the understanding known as categories. The nature of the categories, what are they, how they look like, how they appear to be. The categories are a priori, innate forms of thought, which means it is inherent, and they organize and unify the manifold or the cluster of the intuition. They are not abstracted from experience, but are the necessary condition for the very possibility of experience as objectively valid. Kant identifies 12 categories, grouped under 4 headings. Of course, there are other headings that this 4 is also, in a way, arbitrary. Some people would argue, just as Aristotle has just done. And then the Indian philosophy has just has just like that number. Therefore, the discipline critique again. But of course, his metaphysical deduction is derived from the logical forms of judgment. That is, quantity provide the unity, plurality, and totality concept. And quality, reality, negation, and limitation. Relation, inherent or subsistent, substance, accident, causality, and dependent, community or reciprocity. Modality, possibility, impossibility, existent, non-existent, necessity, contingency. These categories function as the basic principle which the understanding make judgment about objects in general, and without them, even scientific investigation itself will be chaotic and it will be impossible. The synthesis of intuition and concept. For Kant, knowledge arises only when intuitions are subsumed under concepts. This insight is famously captured in his dictum, that his thoughts without content are empty. Intuition without concept, without plan. Sensory data without conceptual organization cannot yield knowledge. While concept without sensory input lack objective reference, phenomena and noumena. One of the most controversial aspects of Kant's epistemology is the distinction between phenomena and noumena, and it is where the idealists like Fichte, Schelling, and Hegel have come very heavily on Kant. Phenomena are objects as they appear to us under the conditions of space, time, and the categories. Noumena or things in themselves are objects considered independently of these conditions. And here, to my thinking, Kant has brought in, smuggled in to the back door with the existing side gates, that is the spirit of the time, where religion was dominant. And that has influenced Kant. This is my thinking, my critique, my personal critique. Kant insists that human knowledge is limited to phenomena. That there he is right. Since space and time and the categories are conditions of human cognition, they cannot legitimately be applied beyond possible experience. Noumena, therefore, are not objects of knowledge, but limiting concepts that mark the boundaries of human cognition. And this is where Kant has committed contradiction. Critical evaluation of Kant's epistemology. Kant's epistemology represents a major advance over both rationalism and empiricism during this time, by showing that experience itself is structured by a priori condition, and not merely structure, but it is an active, dynamic structuring. The chaotic manifold of intuition which is impressed upon our mind. To use the term of David Hume. Kant accounts, 5 minutes, for the necessity and universality of scientific knowledge without appealing to innate idea in the rationalist sense of reducing knowledge to mere sensory impression. However, Kant's introduction of noumena has been widely criticized. If things in themselves are in principle unknowable and unknown, then logically, how can Kant meaningfully assert their existence? That is where I am saying he has marked into the back door. The very claim that there is something beyond phenomena, seems to involve a form of knowledge about what cannot be known. This tension has led many critics to accuse Kant of inconsistency or of reintroducing metaphysics to the back door. Post-Kantian philosophers, as I mentioned earlier, think in themselves are as a boundary concept preventing reason from overstepping the limits of possible experience. Kant's epistemology marked a decisive turning point in the history of Western philosophy by locating the conditions of knowledge within the cognitive faculty of the subject. Kant fundamentally transformed the epistemological landscape. His synthesis of reason and experience provide a powerful account of objective knowledge while simultaneously setting firm limits to human cognition. Despite its internal tension, particularly regarding the status of noumena, Kant's critical philosophy continues to shape the contemporary debate in epistemology, metaphysics, and philosophy of science. His enduring legacy lies in demonstrating that human knowledge is neither a mere reflection of an independent reality nor a purely rational construction, but the result of a dynamic interplay between the world as it appears and structures of the human mind. And it is where the vast majority of the human being in religion or any epistemic illusion, like optical illusion, have gone wrong. Unfortunately, vast majority of the human beings, I would say 90% of the human beings have gone wrong. So this is my conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mao. Now, we go for discussion. Yeah, especially from the students, if you have some queries, we'll appreciate that.
Post-Kantian philosophers have raised certain questions. Sorry, I'm just asking one. There are post-Kantian philosophers like Hegel, Bradley, etc. So Hegel, Bradley. So how? I mean, my question is, they question the basic epistemology of it. So, I mean, in your opinion, how much their criticism are justified?
Well, here, Bradley cannot be put properly. Bradley or P.H. Gray. Their approach is slightly different. But you can put Fichte, Schelling, and Hegel. They are criticizing Kant from their standpoint that the distinction between or the complete separation of subject-object dualism, which Kant has made, from that basis, they're criticizing that even the structure of the subject itself is also a part of the object, and object itself also constitutive of the subject. From that standpoint, Schelling, Fichte, and Hegel are criticizing, thereby Hegel brought the absolute idea or absolute subject from the objective spirit, subjective spirit to absolute spirit. From that standpoint, they're criticizing. But I would say, from their standpoint, they may be justified, but there are other critics, other philosophers who think that that does not stand. But you mentioned philosopher Bradley and T.S. Green and McTaggart and others, their standpoint is again different from the absolute idealist standpoint. Okay? But good question, but good point. Thank you.
Yeah.
Honorable Sir, I have a question. I am from office staff of Dr. System Project College. Sir, how can we determine whether our understanding of knowledge is free from the influence of subjectivity?
What will you?
Influence of subjectivity.
Okay.
He's not a philosophy student. Still, he's trying to answer questions.
Okay. What investigation of how many different types of microorganisms are there in the human body? Millions and billions of bacteria, viruses, and other microorganisms are there in our human body. So, to this point, how are we able to know them? What is enabling us to know this or to know the several countless number of stars? For God, it is the inherent, innate, but here Kantian innate is different from Cartesian innate again, okay? Inherent as sort of part of the subjective structure apparatus, which is also, of course, not static like the space and time of Kant, which is slightly again different from Newton in space and time. So they are not only merely inherent, the metaphor of the glass. With the help of your glass, you're able to see me, I'm able to see you, but if you wear green glass, you see everything green. So it is not only a categorical spectacle, but it is also actively structuring, actively organizing, actively unifying, okay, of the raw material that comes. And that's how Kant is trying to tell us how we're able to know. And without this, whatever we see in the world would be very messy, very chaotic. We will not be experiencing what we're experiencing. Okay? This is what Kant is trying to do. Okay? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
For the students also, if any student fails to understand, I'm happy to clarify.
I think I will.
Yes, please.
Clarification on there are no
What?
here. There is no philosophy department and no philosophy students here. Students are from different disciplines, right? So that is why the right no interlink. Yeah.
For different disciplines.
Yeah. Philosophy students are not. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, of course, for different disciplines. I'm sorry, of course, a little bit of preliminary knowledge is necessary because we are, in a way, discussing a highly technical field, so it may not be that easy for the other subject. I feel sorry, but of course, with sound common sense, you'll be able to grasp the shadow. Okay? So, in case you wish to seek clarification, you are most welcome. So, don't feel shy.
All right, so Professor, I thank you.
Okay.
Professor Mao. Thank you so much for the proposition. I thank both the speakers.
Thank you very much.
Session. And we close the session. So that's
Photograph please. और माननीय सर एक्सपर्ट को टेक फोटोग्राफ ये मेरा रिक्वेस्ट Okay, thank you, sir. Yes, we can laugh. And also, we can laugh and crowd with having photograph, a nice photograph with spectacular.